Well, they're pretty representative, aren't they? I mean, it's they're obviously the people that we found yesterday, but lots and lots of people are finding it really difficult to grapple with some of these tricky terms. And so let's get the thoughts of children's author Michael Rosen, who wrote We're Going on a Bear Hunt, and also hosts a radio programme looking at the world of words and how we use them. Also here, stand-up comedians Simon Evans and Matt Ford. Matt used to actually work for the Labour Party, so knows a thing or two about political communication. So whose fault is it then? I mean, who's not communicating this well enough?
Well, I think a lot of the problem is that the words are actually quite Latin, they're quite French words, and also we use words, we move them across. So an article, we all know what an article is, it's a thing in the newspaper, or it's this, that's a kind of article, and then suddenly we have a thing called Article 50. So we've moved it across. So what happens is these words are being used in ways that are unfamiliar to us. So if you say backstop, well, what's a backstop? It's an American metaphor. We've suddenly got something quite complicated, which we're using. This guy stands behind the baseball thing, and we say that's a backstop, but it's daft. I mean, if you're going to want the idea of catching, we have a wicket keeper, but instead we've ended up calling it a backstop. So
who wicket keeper wouldn't sound plausible, though, would it?
All right, but no. Why is it a backstop? Where did the metaphor come from? So people are struggling with some of these things because the words used are not familiar to us. So that's part of the problem.
So let's take a look then at the actual explanation of backstop. A backup plan to ensure there are no physical barriers or checks on people or goods crossing the border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland after the UK leaves the EU, if we leave without a deal.
But that's not true, because what it is a new arrangement. Okay. You see, because or carrying on the arrangement after Brexit. But to say a backstop just suggests that somebody's going to pick up the pieces. Do you see? Metaphorically, it's that. Right.
This is the thing, though, isn't it? It's like we can sort of boil it down into the explanation, but it's so complicated. How do you two deal with it in the world of comedy?
I always try and... analogies are helpful, aren't they, I find? And that's part of the problem, is the backstop itself is an analogy. So you're doing an analogy of an analogy.
Or even a metaphor.
Or even a metaphor. So it's trying to break through a lot of the pomposity of it. I think there's a difference between... legitimate. I don't have a problem with the backstop as a metaphor and analogy for what it is. It's other stuff. It's when people use deliberately opaque language, like Rees-Mogg and Boris Johnson do, to deliberately obfuscate and create a sense of confusion. Whereas actually, the backstop pretty much makes sense to me. So I don't have a problem with using that as a phrase.
I think it makes sense to some extent, but all it is delaying the point at which you have to engage with what is actually happening. And by using a simple word like backstop, the suggestion is, so you understand it's a backstop. And people go, no, I don't understand. How are you going to do it? Because you've got a situation in Ireland where you currently have a soft border and nobody's being stopped, and the backstop is the proposition that if no arrangement is come to, then that at least is guaranteed. Well, you still haven't explained how, just by calling it a backstop. All you've done is, put another layer of...
hiding behind it is the Good Friday Agreement. So every time they say backstop, there's a little secret bit going on, which is, we've got to do this because of the Good Friday Agreement. But we say backstop and it sounds, oh, right, chung, catch it. But hiding behind it is something really quite massive.
But this is part of the problem with the whole withdrawal agreement. This is part of a far wider problem, which is the whole withdrawal agreement is immensely vague. If you read even 2 or 3 pages of it, most of it has not been agreed yet. There are very few areas in which we've actually agreed our departure from the European Union. So the
we're
whole
arguing about the future relationship when the withdrawal agreement is
about... I can certainly tell you it is death to stand up. It's absolute death to stand up. And you must not talk about it at all. No, but you cannot... All you can talk about on stage as a stand-up is how boring it is, how long it's taking. I have a joke to the effect that it is taking longer to detach politically from Europe than it did geologically. And at that level, I think people can understand that, we all recognise an emotional reaction we're having to the whole thing. But as soon as you try and identify or isolate any particular part of these specific, proposals, everyone's eyes just immediately frost.
So let's move on then to no deal. Britain leaving the European Union with no formal agreement on the terms of the UK's withdrawal or future trade relations. I mean, there's actually a lot of confusion around that, with some people actually even thinking that no deal means not even leaving
not Brexit at all.
Yeah.
And that's really worrying. I went to a great presentation that Maury did with King's College, and I think it was something alarming, like 30 or 40% of people think that no deal means no Brexit.
And that is I suppose what you're saying there, well, that's quite interesting, isn't it? Because if you, in the world of contracts, like I guess some of us, we sign contracts, freelancers and so on, the idea if there's no deal, then you walk away, you have no deal between you.
But no deal is a deal.
No deal is the default deal, isn't it?
But no deal is a
No
deal.
deal is no deal.
But no deal is a deal because you don't walk away with nothing. You walk away with a certain set of rules, your WTO rules.
No
Yes,
deal
it's a
in
different
our
deal.
terms is
Yes, but
equivalent.
there's no deal with the EU. That's all right, it seems to me, because we enter
It's a
deals.
deal for the country.
Oh,
So it's-
right, yes.
It would be
I
the
quite like
equivalent
that
of
one. I think
favoured
no,
nation.
no deal works for me.
Let's
Yes,
move on to
as a metaphor.
Even Brexit means different things to different people, of
Yes.
course, doesn't it? And so there's soft Brexit.
Brexit.
I remember
Brexit,
when
we've had that. That's been
yeah,
established.
we've had that.
Oh,
so
right.
let's
That's good.
say
Yes.
what soft Brexit means. There it is.
Well, of course, it was an invented blend anyway, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, which took a while to catch on, actually, didn't it? The word
Yes.
Brexit. But anyway, it's in the jargon now.
Brexit sounds so old-fashioned now, doesn't it? Brexit. Do you remember Brexit?
Well, when
was
we
the
thought
Greeks
the Greeks
leaving.
would leave, and
Yeah.
Okay, so soft
Defunct.
Brexit, leaving the EU but staying as closely aligned to it as possible and retaining a similar trading relationship but compromising on freedom of movement of people. Hard Brexit, few of the existing ties between the UK and the EU would be retained, leading to lots of changes.
I mean, it comes down to what you think the European Union is for a lot of people.
Yeah.
For me, it was always the institutions of the European Union, the Parliament and the Commission and things like that. For other people, it did mean the single market and the customs union. Now, I actually don't think the vast majority of people knew what the single market or the customs union was before the referendum, but they become terribly animated about it afterwards. I think
Well, yesterday, actually, in the Commons, Theresa May was sort of saying to Jeremy Corbyn he didn't understand it because she was raising various issues around common market, customs union, sorry. I don't know if that was true that
I
he
just
didn't.
think of it as a game of Monopoly, that the players are just playing, the EU is a game of Monopoly, that you're playing financial games inside this system of rules that is inside the box of the Monopoly game, the Monopoly board. And what's happened is Britannia says, I don't want to play anymore. She's got up, and then she's married to Erin, right? You get me? Right, you with me?
Do you
And
know what?
Erin is
I
going,
think this was
oi,
supposed
we had
to
a
be,
deal.
We were hoping that everyone would understand it.
it's making
More
more understandable.
What you've got to do is you've got to fill a bath with sand and then you take the plug hole out, but then you film it and play it back in reverse.
If you haven't found you understand the issues any better as a result of what's been expressed there, you can stay up to date throughout the day with BBC News, breaking down the jargon on Brexit on radio, TV and online, where you can use our jargon busting guide to check the most used terms and phrases. bbc.co.uk/Brexit or the BBC News app and click on Brexit Jargon Explained. Thank you for your company today. I'll be here same time tomorrow. Have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.